Let me give you this while I think about it.
Sure. Thank you.
Yeah.
You just had one thing I think you just did. He's got two things today.
I feel like, yeah, but, I mean,
That's great.
yeah.
Hey, will that work?
Yes, this is just fine. We'll get it all fiddled with here. And,
We're down at 105 today, but they had a bunch of other coffee creamers too. And they're-
Yes, we still have a bunch,
So
yeah.
should he take this back? It's like,
Well, you can, that way you can make sure you have enough coffee, you know, the different creamers.
That's fine.
It's up to you guys.
Okay.
If you-
fine.
That's fine.
You know, whatever it takes, you know, will work for you guys.
Okay.
All righty?
Thank you very much.
Hey, thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Hi.
Did you draw the picture of the?
I didn't. I asked Chris Barnett if he did, and he said he didn't. We can't figure out if it's a donkey or a hippo.
I thought donkey to begin with.
I do too.
um,
I thought donkey.
Because I don't think. Well, it could go either way.
It looks like, it sort of looks like Eeyore,
Yeah,
right?
tail is problematic. Because I'm not sure if that tail
We
fits.
said it was like a foxtail.
Right.
Yeah.
At least those comfortable chairs.
Super.
Oh, good, they're hero rated.
Yes, they just.
What else do you guys need?
I don't think we really need anything else.
Want some plates there for the fruit, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah, let me go grab some plates. That's warm, right? It's not like the old one. Okay.
No, they just throw that one in. So.
Hey, I don't know who's meeting in here, but they got coffee and stuff. So I may have a question with you. I'm trying to fire up the plotter to plot something off. And Goy is not liking. It keeps telling me to begin with that there's an open door, but there's not.
You try turning them off and on again?
I did that. I unplugged it from the wall and let it sit for a little bit.
Okay,
so
it's probably got a sensor somewhere that thinks it's.
But it doesn't give me an error on the screen on the.
Yeah.
This is like on the. You know the on your computer when you send it to plot, it kicks back an error and says, "Hey, there's a core opening." It goes ahead and spools up, but that never actually shows up in the queue on the plotter. I kind of get a sense that there's a disconnect. I tried different cabling and some things along those lines.
I will poke at it, but
I set a job to it. I'm just gonna like sit. Maybe it get off a little bit. Maybe it needs like.
if it's throwing like an error saying the thing's open for service, it may not let a job go through.
I would think that it would at least let you pull over there too.
Yeah, I thought maybe at least
It could be a driver issue.
fruit. Open this up. No one will get into it. It's not open. It's like a chip.
Okay.
Nobody will ever open the shoes.
You're less likely to be true.
Alright.
Yeah, thanks, Andy.
I told Rodney about the Jessica hearing that podcast of the Alexa.
Right. You guys check yours out?
No, we don't have Alexa. but
Oh, Mike said he did.
I was like, oh. He started laughing. He goes, you and Kylie talk in your sleep so much. I bet if we did have it, she'd answer you guys.
Probably.
But I was like, this wasn't like that.
Right.
He doesn't believe in that stuff.
Like, this was
Yeah.
Kooks.
He thinks it's hocus pocus.
This was,
What did I hear on the radio this morning? Something about a little kid's first words, you know? And this little kid says either mom and dad and something else. And his fourth new word was Alexa.
Oh. What his first word?
probably. I was telling these guys, so my wife's really big into murder podcasts. And so she was listening to one, and apparently there's like,
You're good.
you know, people can go online and they can like make comments. And it was basically like, this is why I drink, or something like that. And so this one person had put on there, was like, the reason I'm drinking today is because I woke up in the middle of the night last night and our Alexa said, no problem. And,
That's okay.
or that's okay. Yeah, so that's okay. And they were like, well, that's strange. And then they went, and apparently those things record the question that's responding to.
Okay.
And so they could hear the question, which was like a deep voice saying, sorry. And they're like, who said that? Did you see that too?
You know, you told me about
I
it.
told you about it.
Yeah.
I wonder. We used to live in a haunted house that would talk to my mom,
Yeah.
and like I heard maniacal laughter. That was it, but it would legit talk to her, and I wonder if like,
If that would work.
yeah,
There's
Like-
probably people in the house.
right.
So the ghosts are going to go on eBay or
That's
stuff.
what, or like, yeah. That's crazy.
Yeah, the ghost ordered me these really expensive shoes. It wasn't me. It was the ghost.
So I tell my husband, the ghosts have cravings.
Right.
Oh, maybe I'll tell John 4:30.
I don't really like, you know, like most people, you don't really fully believe, I guess, in ghosts, but there's certain, you know, interactions that you have in your life. My dad and my stepmom, they've lived in their house now for 17 years or something, and they have one closet they don't put anything in anymore, because when they first moved in, anytime they had stuff in that closet, it would move and they could hear things going on in there. And the only way they've been able to stop it is just to not ever put anything in that closet. And my dad is not the kind of guy to be like, you know, like to give in to that kind of stuff. But after so many years, they were finally like, we're done. We're done. We're done hearing it. And by not having anything in there, they don't hear anything.
That's insane.
But as soon as they put stuff in there, they hear stuff. So that's why I'm like, you know,
Hey.
Hi.
How you doing?
Lee Miller.
Lee,
Nice
Chris
to meet
Barnett.
you. Yeah, sorry,
hi,
I missed the last meeting.
Jamie,
Oh,
nice
Nice
to
to
meet you.
meet you.
Hi.
Melissa.
Nice to meet you, Melissa.
Michael.
Hi, nice to meet you, Michael.
Nice to meet you too. Have we got anybody on the phone?
Check the Zoom.
Put another chair in here.
Which,
That one, click on that. Nope, just us.
okay. That's right. Oh, yes.
I can also
We've got a lot of room in there.
move, we got those extra chairs.
Who have we heard isn't come?
Rob
Rob
Collenbach is not coming.
I wouldn't show up in my earlier meeting either.
Is that right?
He must really be
Yeah,
busy today. Let's see, let me look at the appointment thing again and see Rebecca and.
Yeah, Rebecca. Yeah.
Yep, those are the three, well, then we had Ray, but we already know about Ray. So those are
Or
the,
Ryan's taking Ray's place.
right, those are the three that declined.
Okay.
So Charles Ellis joined by phone last time, so he might join by Zoom.
We don't know if we're really on this.
Tim Baker's
Yep.
Yeah.
He is on
probably
there.
will be on the phone, I would imagine.
Oh, okay.
He's up.
And then Brent Carpenter and Bill Lear.
Tim Evans. He said he would, you will talk to him.
Angela.
You get so cranky when I get sick.
I want to see
I
how
don't
many
think
of
that's
us
just you. I don't think people's
not
moods
feel
normally
good tomorrow
improve.
because of our flu shot.
Oh, yeah.
I know, but it's just, I don't like
How do you
it.
feel today? You got your flu shot yesterday.
I feel okay. You know, this morning though, I felt a little bit off.
Achy?
Not so much achy. I felt like it took a little bit to kind of get going.
I know they say that it doesn't make you sick, but I sometimes believe otherwise.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't gotten sick. I've done it
Mhm.
Hi, Chris. How are you? Good to see you.
Someone else
too.
just joined. Oh, Joe. There's Joe.
Oh, Joe's by phone today.
Yep. Hi, Joe.
Hello, how y'all?
Hello, Joe, can you hear us?
Talking.
Yeah, I can hear you.
We need to
Can you
try
hear
We
me?
need to turn up our volume.
Volume.
Oh, my goodness. Oh, here we go.
How about that?
No, I think you gotta do it on the
Oh, on the remote here.
computer.
Hold on,
Oh.
Joe, we're trying to figure out the technology.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, here we
So
go.
you dry erase right on the wall.
Oh, we muted ourselves.
It works great.
Yeah.
I use it daily, much to
No, I
their
can hear you all fine.
Well, it worked last time.
um,
Well, Joe, we may be having a technical issue
Yeah,
here.
go home, I'm just coming down.
Oh, you're not gonna stick?
I don't think so.
He had the flu shot.
Yeah, flu shot.
Nope.
There you are.
No, I'm fine.
Hang on, does that work any better?
Weeks now,
Mhm.
so I'm at the tail end.
Yeah.
But I just want to rest.
Chat.
She's focusing.
Joe, can you chat? if
Oh,
you
I
can hear
know.
us?
Go rest. Get better, man.
He was talking now. Joe, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you fine.
Oh, he's talking and we can't hear him.
Hang on. I'm going to get out and get back in.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
It's
turned up
up, we
the
turned
volume,
up.
but, you know, I hate to turn it up too loud. Here's Jenna.
Well, I can go grab my phone. Oh, I think what we decided last time was there's no phone jack in here,
There's no phone jack in here.
Can
right?
you test the audio?
Yeah,
Zoom
we need someone else
application?
to log in.
Okay, can you
I
hear
can
me?
log
should
in
be
my
like a-
laptop.
There should be like a test.
Well, we should hear them. We should hear something. Sorry, guys, if you're
Test 1, 2, test 1, 2.
seeing us or
Test 1, 2, test.
let me turn on our video. We're not live with the sound just yet. Let me go ask Carol.
How about now? Can you hear me now?
Is this a phone jack? No, it's like a phone, not the DSL phone thing.
It's Chris that will use it.
Oh,
Write
yeah.
everything down, right?
That's like.
Oh, I just clattered off
Yep.
for an hour. Yeah.
It's a good idea.
I have this bad habit of putting my hands around my face and
Yep.
vector and.
So this says I'm talking on the meeting.
Don't hear you.
It did say I was talking.
Sorry?
Thank you.
This is the fully scoped our data indicators.
So wherever you're talking. Okay.
Right, refresh yourself.
Thank you.
Mary Jo's on her
I know,
way.
it did. It was doing it initially, but now it's.
We've got a few minutes before the meeting's supposed to start. We may be having audio issues on. So you can hear me.
I can. I don't know how to use the computer yet. Stop it.
But
Can you test? Chris, can you test it?
test it out.
Go under microphone. There should, in the bottom, there's this little carrot. No. Carrot. And then test speakers and microphone. No, turn. My microphone is off.
Goodness.
Okay.
It's okay, we're technologists.
Right.
Yes, now we have
I'm kicking us out,
Yeah,
just in case this is-
so we have sound. We're just not catching anybody on the phone.
So you're still not hearing this at all?
we can hear you.
We can hear you.
Yes.
We're good. You're good. Yeah.
Can you hear me?
Just gotta.
Yes.
Yes. Yes, sorry. Yes, we,
Sorry, Carol. Carol.
I thought that was your speakers, not this. That's great. It was both, wasn't it?
I don't think it was mine,
No?
Mine
Oh, you
were
were
off.
muted.
but
Do what?
Okay,
We don't know.
well,
We don't even know.
Jenna, Tim, and Joe, we'll start in a minute. I think we were expecting one or two more people here physically. So we'll start here in a couple minutes. We'll give them time to show up.
We can't decide if it's a hippo or a donkey. It kind of looks like
Oh.
Eeyore,
oh,
but the
Oh,
tail
it's-
is wrong.
Yeah.
looks pregnant.
I would have called it a hippo until you
Yeah.
said donkey.
See?
See, I thought it was a hippo too.
And I thought
Yeah, but it really has very distinct clothes, doesn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like a donkey.
I
Well,
thought
it's
that
got
foxtail.
ballet shoes on.
That's what
right?
I was
Oh.
thinking, yeah.
That's ballet shoes for sure. With it, because it goes with the.
Well,
tiara
donkeys
thing.
don't do ballet, so it must be a hippo.
Yeah, there are rules in this game.
Yeah.
And only hippos do ballet.
Yep, only hippos.
Well, we've got a slightly different group this time than we did last time. Morning, guys. Have a seat.
Hey, welcome.
Hi. Hello. Hi. Have a seat.
Hello.
We've got room here. We've got room.
I want to go back.
No. How you doing?
Too late, you're in the door.
Maybe that's a free here. You may be typing stuff. Yeah. If somebody else.
You want me to get up on the computer?
Yeah.
No.
It's probably better
Watching
too.
cat
Or not like
videos.
the matching hairs.
Yeah, you probably.
I think it's
Hi, so
Dominic
on my
Wilson.
server,
No,
we have
no.
Coffee, tea.
How are you
cookies, and
doing?
cream.
Good, how are you doing, Sam?
Living the dream.
I can see
How
that.
Living the
you
dream.
craft things on
Yeah,
the camera.
Yeah,
Sure.
I can see.
Little
Yeah.
dolls inside.
Yeah, it's all,
Sure, it is
it's
big.
all bedroom
Yeah.
dream.
Yes, there are, as Angela said, there are refreshments here in the back. We'll go ahead and get started in a moment here. Not sure who else is, we just figured it out.
Okay,
It blasted us down the hallway. Thank you, Mary Jo. No, we- Thanks.
I have 22 in stock.
Okay. Well, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome to meeting number 2 of the Agriculture and Environment Impact Team underneath the All Things Missouri initiative that we're hosting here at the University of Missouri. Today we're going to talk a little bit more down in the weeds on some of the data. We thought we'd start with a recap of some of the use case scenarios that we went over last time, get that fresh in everybody's mind, and bring in some of the use case scenarios from the other impact teams because first off, we thought there were some interesting things that they brought up, and second off, there was some overlap between some of the impact teams. So I think there's some shared goals across extension for some of the things we have happening. I did want to start with introductions. We'll start here in the room. I'll start with myself, Chris Barnett with CARES. I'm the point contact on the Ag and Environment team from CARES. Going around the room.
Lee Miller, I'm in Plant Sciences Extension. I coordinate the Integrated Pest Management Program and the Pesticide Applicator Training Program. And on the side, I'm a turfgrass pathologist.
Ryan Mullen over in Ag Econ kind of extension world, so extension specialist there.
I'm Tim Evans. I'm over at the College of Veterinary Medicine at the Diagnostic Lab.
Melissa DiBartolomeo, Programmer, Analyst, Usability Specialist at CARES.
My name is Michael Hardy. I work at CARES. I'm kind of heading up the youth and family impact team. So,
JD Kleinsorgy, I'm a project coordinator at CARES, and I'm heading up the business and community team.
Jen Ping, also CARES staff, disability specialist.
Everyone, Angela Johnson with CARES. I'm heading up the health and safety impact team.
And I'm Brent Carpenter, Extension Ag Economics.
And on the phone, Jenna, we'll start with you.
Yeah, Jenna Monig. I'm a livestock specialist in Mercer County.
And Joe.
I'm Joe Lear, Northwest Regional Director.
And finally, Tim.
Yeah, Tim Baker, a horticulture specialist in the Northwest region.
Okay. I would like to just express my thanks to everybody for participating in these meetings, and your input on this is going to make this a better product for first off Extension and at the second level for the users across the state of Missouri. So we're really looking forward to doing this. And having said that, I think the Ag and Environment report, we've got a lot of work and improvements we could make to the system that we've got here. But as I said earlier, I would like to start with, if I can get my slide up here. What do I do, just minimize this, Jamie?
No, nope. Say
Cancel that.
close, and then just click on that share, the green share button at the bottom,
Ah, yes.
and it should show you the things that you can share.
I'm going to share the whole screen and go to my PowerPoint.
Okay.
So are the folks on the other end of the Zoom meeting seeing our screen right now?
Yes, I can see you.
Okay, great. Just get a start here. Okay, so again, we're going to host the All Things Missouri. We went over the website last time. For some of you, that was the umpteenth time you've seen All Things Missouri. For some of you, it was the first introduction to it, so I'm very glad that we did that. For those of you that maybe aren't quite as familiar with All Things Missouri, I just want to remind you that this is intended to be a website where you can come in and access data that will help support you in your jobs and help support decision making across Missouri. So that's the primary goal of the site. I want to start with the other impact areas first in terms of their use cases identified, and then circle around to the Ag and Environment team. So for the health and safety impact area, they identified 3 different cases that we brought to the top amongst the pool of cases they discussed that day. The first is a precision social health collection and reporting tool. And the idea behind this is to develop some sort of tool that extension professionals can use to input data and store that data. In this particular case around health and safety, but a tool like this can be used across all 4 of the impact areas for whatever topic you might want to use to collect information on. We discussed possibly having information, protected behind a password, or if it's more public information, it could be something that builds a live database so that it would go immediately out to public use, something like that. Their second case was around a preventative health data report. This is more in line with some of the reporting tools we have on the All Things Missouri site already. But this is focused down on like claims, vaccinations, immunizations, if those are 2 different things. And it could show some specialized analytical data like rates of screening, etc., within that particular report. And finally, they identified the need for an emergency management landscape report. And I don't know if you remember seeing the crosswalk tool we have within All Things Missouri, where you can pick a particular county and it will tell you all the jurisdictions that overlay that, the legislative districts or school districts, etc. This is kind of a similar concept, but focused on the service districts for like ambulance districts or hospitals, but then adding to that things like demographics, population served, usage rates, and assets within that particular area. Any ideas that might generate for this group, or comments or questions you have about those particular use cases?
So the decision was made that when this was all starting, as we went through the process, it wasn't really clear whether health and safety was human health and safety or human and animal health and safety. So it is just humans. Is that what the decision was made to be?
In terms of the extension programming area, I believe that's where we've landed. Is that right, Melissa, based on the Nexus
The whole
conversation
information
we've been in?
architecture and
Yeah, so
Okay.
so
I think that's
these
where they
impact
landed.
areas are really reflective of Extension's current programming areas, which that I think is generally correct, that we're talking about humans here.
Yeah. So So that's
a great question.
Yeah.
I think it would be helpful to have that same kind of overlap for animal health as well, particularly when we're talking about, and this would have to be a little bit different, but if we're looking at confined feeding operations, turkeys, chickens, hogs, those kind of things, when you have outbreaks, being able to overlay those areas with potential outbreak areas would be helpful.
Yeah, if you're talking about airborne transmission or transmission through soil or tire tracks, whatever.
And again, I mean, I can see where if it's in agriculture, but I'm not sure where dogs and cats and some of those other things, whether they fit as well into that category.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. So
that's a that's kind of a crossover area, isn't it?
yeah, I mean, it's got a lot of impact. So, and maybe there's some of these areas. Maybe as we go forward and define what some of these areas, which actually are bridging in different areas, maybe that's the way to go. So
just to remind the group, this is what we are doing now: is defining and coming up with these ideas and these needs, and today identifying data sets that we will carry forward to future work and ideas.
So I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to do.
Exactly.
Oh, holy cow, that really occurs.
Any other thoughts or comments before we move on? Okay. Let's go through the youth and family use cases, and this is again in Michael Hardy's area. The three areas they came up with was a site selection and approval tool for nutrition educators. This is kind of in my mind anyway, maybe Michael, you can correct me, is kind of a riff off of the ag site where a user would go in and pick a particular location in this tool, and it would come back to you and tell you, kind of streamline getting the required data into a report, tell you the stuff going on at the site or around the site. But it would carry it a step further where it would maybe start in on the site approval process for this particular
Yeah,
project,
I think that the way I kind of understood this was they would use something like this along the lines of like actually site selection. So it'd be, they could pull up a number of different, polygon areas that we've got that show different things.
That's right. They were going to evaluate different areas.
And then be like, oh, well, this is, there's concentration of something here. We probably need to really start, set up shop there or something like that, or make sure that there's not like gaps within the coverage. So
they also identified the need for a data collection and reporting tool. They've got it down to a program level data collection tool where we're talking about the examples they have: after school programming, gerontology, healthy homes, human trafficking, some of those things that they'd want to collect information on. Some of the things that maybe are either only collected here within Missouri or difficult to find information on, but we would collect them through the programs that we have. And then finally, they stressed there's no detail on this one, but they wanted to have a report on educational information as it trends over time. And we heard that across a number of the impact areas, is that the data as a snapshot in time is one thing, but it would be really great to see how is that trending, up, down, so on. And I can see how that would have a great impact on some of our data we would collect for the ag and environment team as well. So thoughts on use and family? Questions? Business and community, and Jamie's heading this up. They have another three use cases that we brought to the top. One is to take the program that I believe the Exceed group is heading with their data for decision makers. They do a training and data set dispersion on that through Excel-based files. They would like to have that moved to an online version that would be password protected, so the people that are taking their course or participating in their workshops could have access to that data and that set of tools for that particular activity. And maybe in this case they have access for a year after the workshop or something like that. That might be a revenue generating type of activity as well. They would also like to see a workforce development report, getting down into things like apprenticeship or skill shortages and technical centers, and talk about migration, etc., workflows, commuting. That's what I was looking for, right? Some of that type of information. And finally, Jim, I may need to have you explain this a little bit, the asset network and network mapping.
Yeah, really just looking at around the role of CD folks and the new CES position, ways to identify who are the, what are the organizations and assets in the community, and what are the networks between those. So if you wanted to do resource and referral, you'd have an easy place to look, but also you'd be able to make connections between, these are all the groups that are doing programs related to teen pregnancy prevention or something along those lines, and being able to see that in an easy way on a map or in some sort of directory.
One of the issues that a group of over at the vet school have been looking at, and it's also working with MU Health, is that there's a number of things like the Show Me Echo program and some other, it's through MU Telehealth, which is looking at how do we deal with human health needs in rural areas. And we're trying to do a similar thing to look at what are veterinary needs in rural areas. And I don't know how that interacts with this, but it seems that some of those need assessments and things like that, making sure that, and again, I think looking at this, that our rural communities have their needs met, and if not directly by boots on the ground, making sure that we have internet access, those types of things. Just another, yeah.
Well, and one of the aspects of this area that you're talking about is having the ability for All Things Missouri to tie into existing programs and data sets that the university is already using, whether it's university extension or in a broader aspect, that it would leverage those types of things and make them more another avenue of access to those.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So just to kind of expand on that a little bit, are there metrics or location characteristics that they're already looking at other than broadband that would
Well, I think the person you might want to chat with is Rachel Mutrux over at MU Telehealth. Her last name's spelled Mutrux. She's their person that's developing that, but they've got Show Me Echoes for dermatology, autism, so all kinds of different things. And so how now the problem when you get into some of this into medicine is you've got privacy and other things, but again, some of the things they've done has been looking at what those needs are in other parts of the state.
We could maybe roll it up to some safe statistics like use rates or something like that.
Yeah, and they've got a lot of. She would be one that could help with that. And they've got a lot of metrics there, and so that's been very successful. So.
Okay. Any other comments on the business and community use cases? Okay. Last but not least, agriculture and environment. I have in my notes here, or in Melissa's notes here, thank you, Melissa, for taking all these down.
Putting that on me, huh?
I have that we actually discussed 8 different potential use cases last time, which is quite a suite. We went through and pulled out kind of three that we thought were most representative of the conversation. Not to say that we're going to totally ignore the rest of the use cases, and I've got them here in front of me if we need to circle back to some of those. But these are the three that we thought we could discuss today in terms of data that might support these for moving forward with the conversation after this introduction. First off, you recall Rebecca North brought up the citizen science applications. She was talking about a number of apps or websites that are already in use to collect environmental data, and wanted us to investigate the potential to tap into those sites for two different reasons. One is to access the data that they're already collecting, but second is to promote the use of those sites so that we spread the word and maybe more citizens get involved in collecting the data that will feed back into having a better data set for use within something like All Things Missouri. What am I missing on that? Did anybody who was here last time recall from that conversation?
Rebecca, is she talking about toxic algal blooms? Is
that was, she said that there was an app just for that. I believe.
Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah, I think the idea was just to tap into existing citizen science applications to have a real-time picture of, if we identify some issues that are critical for monitoring and reporting for the All Things Missouri platform, what citizen science tools could we potentially feed from?
I think we briefly discussed, or maybe we didn't, issues with data consistency and data quality with that. I mean, you may have pockets of Missouri that are very active with something like that and other pockets that are not. So it would kind of be as is on the data quality. The other topic that we touched on quite a bit last time was AgSite and the ability to maybe bring AgSite or something like it into the All Things Missouri. And I've been thinking about this a little bit more in terms of how we're going to have to approach our reports and things like this. I haven't talked this over with Ray yet, but I think AgSite as a tool like it is, where you go in and define a parcel of land by outlining it or something like that, and it generates a very site-specific report. Maybe it's not exactly what we're looking for within an overarching things on All Things Missouri, sort of an ag and environment report. It might be that we would pull the types of information that's in AgSite up to a county level summary for those data. For instance, things like land use or a hydrologic summary or something like that, and could report it at a different jurisdiction, something that's higher than the level that's in AgSite right now, and maybe leave AgSite as it is, as a very site-specific reporting tool. Any concerns with that?
Yeah, I think just to add on that a little bit, I think AgSite was talked about a lot as because it has revenue generating applications, which is noted in there, but having what portion of the information from AgSite or the capacity of AgSite is public on All Things Missouri versus what's behind the login versus what could the extension folks sell to a someone who's looking for that type of information.
Like farm creditor.
Right. Yeah.
I was gonna ask, do you know what kind of usage AgSite currently has? Like how many reports are generated? I'm just curious if that's known.
We've got the stats somewhere.
Because I've always been curious because we get calls from bankers all the time. They're like, we require our borrowers to run an AgSite on the piece of land before they buy it. We get calls from realtors that are using it to market.
Right.
We get lots of calls.
I think there's a lot of reports being generated, and that leads to, if we do put it behind a revenue generation, what impact does that have, and how do we do that? We got to think through that carefully. That we're not there on collecting the money just yet, as we've recently learned from our Nexus folks, but it's coming someday. How's that?
It's quite a few, though. I will tell you that in terms of support tickets and stuff too, we get questions about the AgSite tool as well. So
well, I should say that the AgSite tool was brought up by at least two of the other impact teams as a tool that they use for their purposes.
For different purposes.
Yeah,
but it still
areas,
serves them well. So.
Did you have,
I was just wondering kind of out loud. So You'll take what's in ag side, but make it more county level? What is it?
That's one of the
What's in
thoughts
there
running
that
through my
would go,
head.
that would have meaning on a county level basis?
Well, things like land use, you could say, okay, so many acres in crops, so many acres in forest, etc. Would definitely be something to do. I kind of put the categories over here on the board, and I'll be bringing them up on the screen later for the folks on the phone. Hydrologic summary, you can see how many acres of wetland, things like that. Just some standard statistics that you could do at a higher level was one of my thoughts.
Okay.
But push back on that if that's not. And that's not quite the Ag Site report. We still want to bring Ag Site itself into All Things Missouri somehow, and perhaps behind that paywall, perhaps outside. But I'm thinking that the information structure that's in Ag Site could be something that could lend it to our broader Ag and Environment report that's on All Things Missouri right now. But I'm not throwing the Ag Site replication out. I'm saying let's look at it two different ways. And then finally, we discussed an agricultural economics report. It was brought up, things like taxes, land prices, and then all the commodities across the state, like cattle, corn, fruit, wherever, that could be brought into the system and somehow tied to economic data that would be able to show us the trends. Of course, we need to discuss data sources for this information or methodologies if there's going to be an analysis to calculate that, etc. And just as a quick reminder, a couple of the other use cases we talked about included things like the, where'd it go, the climate tool. We've got a lot of climate data. We said we could talk to Pat Ganan about putting a report together on that. And then we talked briefly about doing a track the products report, but I think that we talked about premise ID and that. I don't think we're there on that type of system. So I don't know that we'd want to go very far down along that line.
Would you be including things like cattle prices or things or the cattle market or anything like that?
Well, we could.
I mean, I'm
there's
just
data
obviously
feeds for that type of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think from that animal side of thing, I mean, in looking at our I mean, not only cattle and swine, but also our poultry industry in the state. I mean, but with regard to cattle, the cattle market and the hog market both have incredible impact on what's going on within the state, and it has a lot to do with where our corn, and then if you bring in weather, it brings in where our corn goes.
You might also tie in the crop commodity prices.
Yeah, correct.
Well, I was wondering just basic basis maps and stuff as far as, if you can get data sources from the different MFAs or cash prices and can calculate, Ag Manager and K-State, they do some for Missouri side. If you look at all their different data points, they do have some in Missouri, but probably could be a more elaborate marketing type tool.
Well, it all depends on the data sources and the data feeds from some of that. And
anyways,
how they synchronize too.
Anyways, I'll throw out lots of ideas. But I know there's some rabbits you don't want to chase, but
yeah,
the marketing is a big issue for the farmer.
You don't have anybody call the elevator every day.
No, we don't have an intern to do that right now. Sorry.
But I'm wondering if you could tap into VPN type stuff as far as already.
The private funds are doing it. And they charge for that.
Even cattle prices, there's that feeder cattle basis map that's placed on the
I
web.
think it'd be really difficult for your project to keep track of something that moves as fast as prices.
It would have to be an automated feed if we did so, yes.
Yeah.
And it may be that we don't have to, in the All Things Missouri, more generic reports, maybe we don't have to do that, or we only have to track it once a month or something like that, or do an average. And you'd put the exact daily market
behind a password that maybe only extension people access or something like that. We can also do things like that. I don't know that that's the right thing to do it to, but we can do things like that as well, so that that you would have access as extension folks to certain pieces of information that weren't out there in other ways.
Yeah, I think the question is what do we build that's like for a fee basis, and what do we build that's for, general public or general extension engagement specialists to kind of get a sense of the impact. Agriculture economics is important to understand for folks beyond just in the ag sector.
I mean, a lot of times we spend just educate people like what percentage of your county's income is driven by agriculture.
Right. Exactly.
I mean, just that
Yes.
metric.
And and there are
what percentage of it is just manufacturing industries versus ag versus whatever.
Right.
Just some of those metrics that people to understand what drives the boat. So
yes, and trend over time on some of those metrics, particularly the income metrics, is education. Yeah, you can see that it's a falling proportion of your county that's in ag or growing one, etc.
What about urban applications?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead.
Have you talked about those at all? I didn't hear it in the
Not in
last
this
Zoom.
group, no.
What about lawn green space estimates for homeowners? Something to bring in the general Missouri public, where most of the people are. What about showing folks where, if they were to spill something in the road, what waterway would that pollutant actually go into? I mean, that's the static kind of things I can think of. Dynamic. What about mosquitoes? Could we map something like Japanese beetle outbreaks or brown marmorated stink bugs? I mean, that would be dynamic, but I mean, from a human health aspect, bed bug outbreaks throughout the state. There's a bed bug monitoring site, but I mean, is there a way to bring in the urban into this all things Missouri?
We don't intend for the all things Missouri to be non-urban. We want to cover all of Missouri, so we would be very much interested in doing something like that. But again, it depends on the data sources and data feeds on some of these items you're mentioning. I'm not sure. Is there a Japanese beetle monitoring site? Is it?
The
Okay.
IPM site monitors Japanese beetles,
See?
and we have that, but we don't have interpolated maps. I mean, basically, we have points.
Right.
Right.
And then folks actually will sign up for a listserv, and it will go and send it to
I mean, that
them.
could be getting into that, making that bridge to that citizen science application where, whether it's something that's already collected somewhere, I'm not sure, or, they could be adding, where they're.
Our regional
seeing-
specialists are collecting that.
Okay.
And it
Oh,
goes
nice.
into
Yeah.
our IPM, and
Right.
So then
we'd be happy to share that. We do things on, corn earworm and black cutworm, and
Yeah.
It would be great to do some interpretive maps on that.
Yes.
By county watershed,
particularly over
whatever.
time.
Yeah.
And how it kind of occurs throughout the state. But I mean, that's a lot of that is ag pest, but I mean, something that hooks in the urban folks.
Yes.
what about like wind data or something like that as far as windrows and that kind of stuff with your spraying chemicals?
Well, there's the inversion calculator that Pat Canan and Kevin Bradley have put together.
So if they spray chemicals, they know the typical rainfall, windrows, which way the most typically will go.
Yeah.
Anyways, I was just curious.
And that data's coming in.
Yeah. Okay. There's a windrows in the ag site report too.
I think so. I don't know how many weather stations it's built on. At one point, it used to just be the major airports.
Yeah, no, it's.
But I think now, I think it may be the commercial ag station, weather stations.
I think we're talking about two different things
Right.
too.
Right,
Windrows
right.
is one thing. And
But I'm just talking
inversion
general
is
wind
temperature difference.
But I didn't know from your all's perspective that, wind data or information would be useful for us in the chemical.
Absolutely.
Kevin Bradley's doing for us.
Or just a general environmental concern for distribution of particulate matter, something like that. If you're talking about environmental health and so on. I know.
Well, and even drought and temperature affects urban as well as it affects suburban and agriculture. I mean, that would be important information, particularly in a state like Missouri that is so heterogeneous, depending on where you're at in the state. What somebody thinking that everybody else is experiencing with it's local weather is pretty local around here. It seems so.
Are you doing anything based off of satellite imagery now, where like in a daily or weekly, you're looking at satellite images throughout the state and looking at differences? I mean, we always look at, you know, the hurricane scrubber or the big one from Joplin. You know, you see the city to begin with, and then you see it after the tornado comes through. Is there any application that you're thinking of to do that with this system?
That like I said, we're collecting our ideas right now. So if that's an idea of who would use that and how would we use that, though? Would be the
Flooding.
question. Okay.
I mean, you can look at flooding on a daily basis and have a different scrub and see how those water boundaries are changing.
Yeah, I'd say just to kind of, right now, we're not working with any
Okay.
remotely sensed imagery. It would be, you know, other folks who have worked with it, and we'd be taking those data products, which is what we've kind of done, what we're doing currently. But I mean, we have worked with, got the capacity to do that. It's just needing to have the right application.
So you're taking the data that basically comes in and you're putting the GIS applications to it.
Right.
Okay.
The web-based applications all around there.
Yeah.
Folks on the phone, any comments on this discussion? Okay. Hearing none, I wanted to carry on. There's another slide in here about beyond the 4 impact areas. We kind of had some extension-wide use cases that were brought up across 2 to 4 of the impact areas, most of the impact areas, as our discussion evolved over the first round of meetings. One, and it was discussed in here too, was the idea of a county engagement specialist report. This would be a report that would give the new CES sort of a level set across all 4 impact areas, some basic information that they would have to help them learn about their county or counties that they're working in, and help them conduct their business as they move forward in terms of having that just sort of basic description, that basic context of their area. It says here this would align with the community capitals framework, perhaps. This is a community development sort of framework, talks about things like what social capital, etc.
Yeah.
Maybe that would be one way of organizing this, where it wasn't necessarily organized by impact team, but maybe more down in the topic areas. But that's still an idea that is evolving. We're gathering input from some of the regional directors on this as well. The other thing, we've heard from some folks that they meet with their county councils on a regular basis, and it'd be great to go into the county councils with some basic pieces of information under their belt so that they could pull that up in the meetings or something like that. We know very little about that interaction. If anybody has any comments on that, would be greatly appreciated, because we don't know very much about that area.
Well, I think that's a couple of different things there. One is the county councils, particularly as you start talking about getting ideas on programs and things, trying to bring up some data that would help people see what kind of programming ideas might be available or needed, and trying to identify resources for that. The other one is just talking with either county commissions or any other group that you might be going to talk about partnerships or things like that, having that kind of data, like the county engagement specialist report or the impact report, that kind of talk about where things are at, and if we're doing programs, if that needle's moving, being able to have that kind of information to let folks know that we are doing some things that's making a difference.
Okay. Remind me, some of the other folks here, was this one where they were talking about, gee, it'd be great to make a PowerPoint slide out of the web page, or was that something else? Somebody talked about making a PowerPoint. Yeah.
That's part of it.
So they can have it for their meeting.
Right.
Yeah. we're looking at some software that could do that. That's really exciting.
Yeah, I think whenever they're trying to build some of these reports and things like that, if they can take some of the charts and graphs and turn those instantly into either graphics that can use in the PowerPoint slides or make them a PowerPoint slide, that'd be great.
Yeah. And then finally, several of the folks brought up the need for a researcher's portal on this. This was an area of the password protected area that the researchers could access, have more direct access to certain data, or even the ability to share data that they would upload. What else am I missing on that, guys? There was some more thoughts behind that, right?
Yeah, we had talked about some integrations and such with things like RedCap or other, already withstanding research portals. But other than that, I think this is something we would definitely need to probably do a whole other set of focus groups on to just learn more about
With the researchers.
Yeah, how it's going to be used and how it would be most useful across so many different, focus areas.
Yeah, and if our current data would even, support that, or could be something we'd be working with other folks on.
Any comments on the sort of the extension-wide things that folks brought up to consider for All Things Missouri? Okay. So the next portion of this this meeting is to cover to start having the data discussion. And the way we're going to do that is we're going to start by taking about 15 minutes, which will also be a break time for the folks here in the room. You got cookies. For the folks on the phone, sorry, we can't fax you a cookie. But I want to take that time to take the break, but also think a little bit about the data which we need to support that sort of broad ag and environment a report that will be available on All Things Missouri, the one that's there right now, and how we need to modify it. Also, we need to think about the data that's necessary to support some of these use cases that we brought up, and the new one here about the urban as well, so that we could get those down on paper. We've got little, what happened to our notepads? I didn't get our notepads.
They're in 100. I'll go grab them.
Sorry. We will have little notepads for you guys to maybe make some notes and stick them up. On the board here on the left, I've written up both the current sort of data categories for the ag and environment that we have up in All Things Missouri right now. And because the Ag Site report has been so instrumental in organizing much of our discussion here, I've also written the data categories that we had for the Ag Site report. But feel free to add or delete categories if we need. I should have put an other up there as well. I didn't do that. If we have other categories we need to stick some data sets into, we'll do that as well. And when we come back from the break, we'll have that. For the folks on the phone, I'm going to go ahead and bring up the categories that are in the Ag and Environment report. And we will be talking through these one by one, and then we'll switch over a little bit later in the conversation to the Ag Site report and talk about those. So I'd like to take, 15 minutes? Is that what we took this morning? And gather back around here at about 5 till, and go with the second half of the meeting then. Okay?
If people want to refresh themselves a little bit on data list. Yeah.
Oh, yes. We do have a printed data list to help with the discussion as well. Okay. I may go ahead and mute for the folks on the phone a little bit so that we're not where's my controls here?
Oh, go up to the top.
Oh, there we are. Up at the top. I'm going to go ahead and mute us for a little bit for the folks on the phone. We'll come back on after our break here. Okay? we're having good discussions on our end. We'll start back up here in about a minute. But to continue what I was thinking, one of the things that you think about when you think about tracks or something like this is the Common Land Unit from FSA. That's been hard to get a hold of for years, and then maybe it was easy, and then maybe it was hard again. I kind of lost track of it. I'm looking at Ryan. I think you.
I know we had. I know we
that.
chased it one time, and it was basically like a no.
Yeah.
You know, we were going to visit it with I think Rod Beeler over.
Yes, that's
Arcade Plaza.
And you gave me that. What was it? Farm Market ID website.
Yeah, and I have no clue where they're getting.
What they say, they got proprietary access to the Common Land Unit data. So it's what they say on their website. I don't know how they're getting that. It would sure be great if we could get into the Common Land Unit data, but which is what you were going down along the lines of. I think where you can click on a tract of land and pull it up, but it's pretty restricted on its use or access, I should say. Evidently, USDA feels like there's too much information that could come back and identify specific economics on the farm or something like that for an individual, and they don't release it. That was the story we heard, right?
I think so. It's been several years ago we chased that, but
in elementary school.
Okay, I'd like to go ahead and gather back up and start through on some of the discussion. I don't see a whole lot of folks writing things down here to put on the board, but I do know we've had a good conversation. So get your thinking caps on, and the folks on the phone will kind of go through some of this and talk about data needs, etc. So as a starting point of this discussion, we have on All Things Missouri. Let me just go back to the home page. We have taken some of the reports that we've prepared for other projects that we've done at CARES in recent years and put them together. We've put together one for each of the topic areas. And we put one together for the agricultural environment. And as you can see from the data that we've included in this and the data categories that we've included in this, we haven't had a whole lot of sort of environmental-based projects lately that would have fed into this system. And I think the ag and environment area is probably the area I think we would want to reframe the most amongst the four impact areas in terms of maybe some of the things that the report addresses and some of the things that we highlight in the reporting tool. And again, I remind folks, we're talking about this reporting tool within All Things Missouri and some of the more common data elements that might go into this versus some of the specific tools we might dive down into that would be something we want to gather information on also, some of the things we discussed in our use cases. We want to make sure and cover this as sort of a level set or a framework of ag and environment that we could access across extension or even out into the public, that they would get that snapshot of what's going on in ag and the environment. So to start in here, we'll just travel through each one of these categories and talk about some of the data that's involved and maybe talk about what's missing, what needs to be dropped, etc. So under demographics here, we have some basic demographic elements, the population, the change in population broken out by age, median age, some demographic subgroups here. We've got foreign-born and Hispanic, and urban and rural populations. Certainly this is a nice generic starting point for basic demographics of an area, but I'd like to hear your thoughts about maybe what needs to be included or how this could be expanded.
What about individuals involved in agriculture and some of the, I mean, looking through all of this in each category, if I was Joe Farmer and I was looking at this, I would basically say, where's the agriculture?
Right.
I mean, I look at it and I don't see anything on crops. I don't see anything on farming population. I don't see anything on animals. I don't see anything. I mean, it's great, but at this point in time, I would cross out the way it is right now. I'd cross out ag and put in just environmental. I don't see what I would traditionally see as ag there.
Right. That's what we want to address. And one of the reasons I brought in the categories from the ag side is to address that
Yeah,
concern.
yeah.
But-
No, and I'm not trying to be
and
a,
that may not be the right thing to do either. We
yeah,
need to-
I'm not trying to be a negative. I'm just looking, but that's what I just look at it.
Something we need to address.
That's what appears to be deficient to me. And it seems to me that some individuals who are less satisfied with what the university is providing for them is in some of those rural areas and in agriculture. And I think we really need to try to provide some of that if there's a way to do that.
So are you saying maybe we don't think about these categories and go through them exactly step by step like this? Maybe we reframe this report in with some basic categories that we can all agree on, and then go through data set by data set?
I don't know. I'm just being a pointer here, not a retriever. But
Okay.
I'm just trying to look at it as how do we build this so that it has the information for those that are living in our suburban and rural, suburban, urban, and that, but also provide information of interest to our farmers, to our people who are in agriculture. I think one of the things that's really important in Missouri is that even though many people are not necessarily growing a lot of crops or raising a lot of cattle or doing that, they still, as a lifestyle, life issue, culture, consider themselves to be farmers. And so I think we need to embrace that a bit more. I don't know what the way to fix that, but I'm
You're
just
exactly right, and that's a concern that we've had about this particular report, is it doesn't address some of that in a very strong way. There are elements of
Yeah.
those things in here, but certainly it doesn't have as much of that information as we need to end up with.
I would certainly try to look at or at least the demographics would look at it as what people on farms, I mean, I don't know, other people in the social sciences or rural sociology would know better what those categories
Yeah,
would.
they talk about things like farm proprietors or
Yeah.
female proprietors, Hispanic, so on. Yes,
Yeah.
part-time farmers versus full-time you're talking about, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think
sits in the ag census, right?
Ag
I mean,
census.
that's county level stuff is, yeah.
At the county level, yes, and again, I think Nass has some of that too, but I don't know if we want to look at it.
I don't know.
Okay, but ag census, and of course, it's 5 years out of date or plus now.
But the whole
But
day is
the
gonna be
coming
rolled
out
out here in
soon.
February.
February.
Now, all of it, I think it's the first.
Oh, it's the high level.
I'll say
stuff.
the first round of it will be February. That's what they tell us. Now, the rest of it will probably roll out throughout the whole year. But
I think that's how they did it last time. It was actually like a 2-year rollout rather than a 1-year.
I would tell you a lot of the state level, national stuff will probably come out in the first round. The county level stuff will be
way down there.
Yeah, late
Are,
next year.
are y'all also familiar with like the USDA's Atlas of Rural and Small Town America? You're talking about demographics, especially for ag. A lot of those metrics might fit and not necessarily relate specifically to ag. I mean, they get into things like mining dependent areas or counties that are like tourism dependent and veteran population, things like that that might feed in, and they've already got that framework in place. As Chris was saying, all the metrics that are in the Ag Environment Report right now are there because we've developed them for other projects. So and our projects have not, at least where we've built out
In
these
recent
health
years.
indicators, they haven't been ag focused. We have ag site, we have some other tools that are in ag and environment, but they're not just
Yes.
ready to go.
And certainly we can pull, like they're pulling demographics from the American Community Survey, we can pull those jobs from BLS or BEA, we can pull farm proprietor information from BEA.
Some of those county classifications are really interesting. They have persistent poverty counties, what their economic dependence is, the population gain, population loss. So those, and the rural urban continuum codes too. Also, we want to get beyond just rural, even when we are talking ag and environment. So including all of that would be good.
So I want to bring it back to data and data elements. maybe or data sources that we could talk about within the demographics. We're talking about a variety of things, but it sounds like to me the things we need to add to this would be farm or rural based demographics. Is that right? So we need to extend the demographics section into include.
If we're adding to, yeah.
They're all gonna think I've gone crazy, and I probably have, but is there data on pet ownership and ownership of other types of livestock I mean, I'm just trying to look at that, because there's a lot of information going on right now on this campus with respect to the nursing school, at the vet med, with pet ownership and human health. I don't know if it's so small if there isn't databases out there, but that would seem to be something that would be, if it existed, would be of interest.
There's certainly data out there on animals that are commodities,
Yeah.
not necessarily pets, although it might include horses. But as far as like dog and cat ownership data,
I don't know if
I'm
they
not certain.
Yeah. Well, what I can do is, the other thing I can try to do is look at some of these and meet with our dean and a couple of other people and go over and see if they've got some ideas of data that may exist. So
better. So folks on the phone, any comments on demographics? One of the things that has been consistently asked for is not just the snapshot of how many people are age 18 to 64, but what is the trend in that population? Is my county growing? Is it shrinking? And then also the trends by maybe subgroups. So we could look at people who are, I'm not sure if the data is there, but people are engaged in agriculture, their age groups, and so on. Another way that it's been suggested to us in terms of presenting this information is not necessarily to present it by these age groups, but present it by, hey, this is the millennials, this is the Gen Xers, so on, that you can display the information in that way too, as people understand that.
I did have a comment, and I realized that I had hit the red button on my. Kept me off. Anyway, I've got two mute buttons, and I hit one, and didn't hit the other. Anyway, one of the things we have in commercial horticulture is there's a lot of the various Anabaptist groups that are our main vegetable producers outside of a few areas in Missouri, and I don't know whether there's data available. It would get a little complicated because some are Amish, some are Mennonites. Some Mennonites are not old ordered, it gets, but anyway, just identifying where those groups are located might be of value.
That would be great.
That'd be interesting.
And I think I have seen data on that before. I actually knew somebody who did their master's thesis on Amish in Missouri and had data on them.
That would be interesting in the change over time too. It'd be kind of interesting to see kind of like how those communities are kind of like growing.
Yeah, so say they.
Yeah.
I mean, it's. I grew up next to an Amish community, and it's basically, over time, when you start having 10, 12, 13 children per family,
they got to live somewhere.
Yeah, so those populations are growing.
Okay, that's a great suggestion, Tim. Thanks. Okay, I'm not sure where we want to go from here. Perhaps we should still go through and talk about. First off, the need for these other classifications, and do they fit in this report or not? And I just want to kind of get the pulse of the group on that. And see, kind of first off, look at this data to see what we're talking about within this group. Human environment data, this is mainly, again, more focused on some of the urban applications where you talk about housing or commuting, etc. Talking about sort of the human environment that the humans would live in if you're talking about ag and environment within this category. What's the feeling on this? Is this something that you think needs to be in the ag and environment group, or is that not quite the same type of environment that you would want to present within your impact area?
What's the average parcel, like the the area of a parcel of land that's owned by somebody. Like how big is that in areas, if that makes sense.
Limited
So you go
to residential ownership, or these be factories and?
It would be anything, be a
Yeah.
farm. I mean, if you go out to a rural county, I mean, it might be 15 acres. If you go into St. Louis, it might be less than a tenth. And I think that would be an interesting look at how particularly the humans are affecting their environment.
I'm fairly confident we can get information on the average size of farms. I'm not at all confident on the average size of all types of land holdings.
One thing that might be, I don't know whether it goes in here or not, but information on counties that have planning and zoning, and whether that's countywide or township wide, or how that's implemented, because that does have some effect on, acreage owned and what can be done in a county.
And I can go on Zillow and see everybody's plot of land. It's got to be there somewhere.
Yeah.
Has to.
A lot of those systems are proprietary that have land parcels. I was actually a couple months ago talking with the state geographic information officer, and she's been trying for like 5 years to get a statewide land parcel there gathered from somewhere, and it's very difficult. First off, there's 114, actually 115 entities that produce those, all in different ways, and all of them have different ideas about how they should share that information.
That's interesting.
So, yeah. But places like Zillow work out deals with them and get it by. That's some.
But we also talked about, if we're talking about human environment, maybe not in these terms, it came up earlier, what percentage of the county is incorporated versus not. That kind of gets into the zoning laws. What percentage might be public land versus privately held, and what percentage is water area and things like that.
Yeah.
Could
so
fit into that framework.
There's subdivisions already drawn up, out in rural areas you wouldn't know, but it's restricted.
Right. Until it starts being developed, you don't know what's going to happen out there.
Is there information in demographics with respect to level of education?
Educational attainment, yes.
Okay, and then I don't know if it fits in for the state, but is with I was thinking even just looking at the demographics of even what the university is and where people are coming from within the state, and I don't know if that fits in this or not. I was just trying to.
If you think that's a good thing to include in the ag environment, yes, that information is available through the student census every fall, right?
And maybe the thing,
all 4 campuses.
maybe of interest might be not everything, but perhaps the distribution of students that are in ag-centered majors. Looking at animal science versus agronomy versus some of those, that might be of interest to as a demographic that relates to the university and what it's doing in different.
Well, we might be able to at least break it down by college. I'm not sure if we could always get to the major, but yeah, like Kaffner.
Yeah, but it would be interesting even with I would suspect Kaffner would have a breakdown with some of them, but I'm just trying to look at those things that and again, this is all great data, but what are some things throw into agriculture, Bazoo in agriculture, and information that someone might be interested in, and again, a lot of those things have urban applications as well.
So would you, am I hearing maybe you're thinking we wouldn't have some of this information like we're seeing under human environment isn't really the priority information to include in this report, or would you just leave it there?
I don't disagree. I'm not disagreeing with what you have up there. No, I'm not disagreeing with what's there. I'm just thinking there are more things to add to that, but then I don't know what we're thinking as far as what is too much. In other words,
Right, you're gonna get overwhelmed at some point.
Yeah, so
that's why we want to prioritize some of
yeah,
this.
but definitely in my mind, anything that has to do that anyone off the street could say that has something to do with agriculture is a demographics, to me belongs in this category.
Or the environment.
Yeah, or the environment
Right.
is a priority.
Right, and I can understand then how commuter travel patterns, some people would scratch their heads around, oh, should that be in ag and environment? I don't know.
I vote no.
Yeah,
Okay.
I think most of these are already represented in the business and community.
That's
report
true. They
anyway.
can get at this in other reports too. That's the other thing to think about.
Yeah, I think looking at distribution of population particularly in rural areas, distribution of what people within the state are involved in what industries related to agriculture. I think some of those kinds of things I think fit very well in the demographics of for ag
Okay.
and environment.
So can I just say then, and we got several more to get through, that maybe we'd think about rethinking this human environment category and taking a lot of that out, maybe replacing it with some of these other things we talked about earlier under human environment. Would everybody be fine with that? And we could revamp this section along those lines?
Yeah, I struggle with this section and looking at
Yeah.
commute. I mean,
Yeah.
you could
That's-
really make about 5 leaps and go, well, commute, that might go with air quality, and air quality is an environment, and
But
housing.
it's down a ways. Yeah.
I mean,
Okay.
the housing would be more in like the marketing and the business, even for farmers, of where they would maybe market their thing.
Well, then
I have a hard time with this whole section.
Oh, and I'm sorry, and I wasn't looking at that. I was just looking at this here.
Oh,
So-
yeah. No,
Sorry. This is my first meeting. I was okay.
So then let me move on to the physical environment, and we may have some of the same thoughts on that, but I want to hear, and this does get a little bit more into the environmental data that we want to make sure we're covering in this report as well.
Yeah.
So we've got things like access to parks, air quality, climate, and environmental diversity. We thought these would be good things to have in an environmental report, but there could definitely be an expansion of your physical environment information.
And what about things like karst topography and that sinkhole?
Right.
The USGS,
I mean,
all the USGS data.
Yeah.
There's tons of USGS data, from gauging data to descriptions of landscape, et cetera, that could be brought into a physical environment
I mean,
description.
water table type data, from water wells from
Water
DNR.
quality.
I mean, when I see ag and environment, those are the kind of things, when I think of environment, that's what jumps out to me. It's like water, soils, different types of things like that kind of jump out.
Is there any issue with the information that we have in here, though? Is this, like in the last category, we said maybe we'd scrap most of those from the report. What about these items? Are these something that maybe we would want to keep in the report?
Like climate and health, no access to air conditioning. I mean, that's human environment.
Yeah.
That
that would be
doesn't
brought up
belong there.
I was wondering about park access.
But
I'm not
that
sure
too.
what's under there.
Park access, that could be human environment as well. That is, those are two different measures of access to parks as a influence of distance, right?
It's percentage of population within, I think, a half mile of a park, and it's generally national park, state
Good
park.
info, not a.
Yeah.
Would you
Well,
want to
it might
have,
be
would you want to have one separate, segmenting climate as kind of its own?
Climate as its own category would be a good thing. And you see on the ag
So-
side, too, the climate is its own category.
I mean,
we can talk about
frost
data.
and freeze probabilities and things like that,
Yes.
so people understand it.
Well, and you got to think, is it climate or is it weather? And it might
Yeah.
be weather and climate
It can be
as a
both.
category, yeah.
The climate and land use or land environment. Physical environment's kind of funky too.
Yeah.
I'm saying we need to rethink, guys, our categories on this.
Yep.
And I'm going to move on to the ag side here in a minute. I want to go on through these other three categories. I think we'll have some of our same thoughts as we had on human environment on these categories. And then I want to talk about the ag side categories and see what we can do to arrange some of those categories into here. How's that? So on the food systems, this is more about food use, and maybe gets into some of the more the marketing information around agriculture. Here you've got things like community supported agriculture, local food incentives, on-farm markets, etc. Information, farmers markets, information we have on that.
Well, I like kind of that tool that you developed for Parcells several years ago.
The ag opportunities.
Yeah, because that's basically where you pin your location, and it basically draws a map around you saying you're this many miles from your farmers markets, this many miles from wherever.
And again, I want to distinguish between this sort of generic report that we have versus a specific tool to do something like that. And what can we say about that same data in this more generic one, where maybe you pick 2 counties and you know all the farmers markets in them?
But if you look at that food system, I mean, food systems also capture where the production of things are. So we get into where are the vegetable farms? Where are the, what's the livestock, inventories for counties and stuff too to understand. I mean, does that fit into there, or is this totally the end?
I think we're thinking this is more the end consumer, farm to consumer side rather than the
Yeah, I
inventories.
mean, I could see a whole nother category for food production.
Right.
And
I mean,
that-
you could really break that
Crop
down.
stats, the
into
livestock
different-
stats.
Yeah, and livestock sales facilities. I mean, that would be an and if you could combine with that livestock sales facilities with some idea, if it's out there, if there's data out there providing what the volume that goes through some of those areas, they can give you some idea about the number of animals or whatever. But I think something like that would be useful for somebody
The only
to.
question I have is that sensitive information from an economic standpoint.
And I don't know
Most
what's.
of it's,
Is
if they
it
have a
published?
livestock reporter there, it's public.
Okay.
If they don't have a reporter there.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing you can do is you can certainly identify where they are, and then there's always the possibility if the information is available or the information is not available, you just say information not available. I mean, I think that's, and what happens in there, if this becomes a popular thing and people are seeing that and information is not available, it might become available. Or if people find a negative of being available, it might become unavailable. But I'm just trying to, I think trying to look at this is that I think we have to look at, look at farm to market, but also market to the table and describe how that we want to, how we want to handle that with respect to the things that we're talking about. That's what I'm.
What is meant by food hubs?
Food hubs.
We don't
those
have our
are-
explanations.
Yeah, no, they are, I think, like distribution centers for, I think, for low income.
It's like
folks. Is
food
that
banks
right?
or something?
Yeah, they're
Okay.
more like food banks.
Yeah, I've been looking at some of this, and there's some things that are probably miscategorized, and of course that's the data set that you're pulling it off of, I'm sure. The one big hole that I don't see here, though, is the produce auctions. We've got quite a few in Missouri, and I just looked at Versailles. It's not listed, and the one at Jamesport isn't listed, and they're selling millions of dollars worth of produce every year. So that would be another, it's not the same as a farmer's market, so it would be a different category.
That's in that local market tool.
Yes, it is.
already.
Although,
Or if it's up to date. If it's up to date, but
yeah.
Chris, do you want to maybe pull up the Colorado food report? Because they have some additional indicators in there too that are specifically related to.
How do I get to that?
Go to CO Food Policy Network. Engagementnetwork.org. Oh, it's just cofoodpolicynetwork.org. Sorry. That's
How
my
do I
bad.
get rid of this thing? Wait, okay.
Just be patient.
This is it?
Yes. There you go. And if you go to create a food assessment, you can just click on their data indicators, or yeah. You can kind of see how they have it categorized a little bit differently.
This is another system that we're doing. You see that the systems look the same. You're using the same template.
Yeah. But they have some agriculture, yeah.
So they have farms,
I guess
farms of value sales, harvested for fruit and vegetable, agritourism. Yeah. Farms by commodity, farms with direct sales, and food websites.
Yeah. Look under maybe economic too. They might have some other indicators. Production, farms and ranges, and distributors. So, yeah.
How come we don't have our sentence in here?
I don't know.
Never been in there?
No.
That seems that would be useful.
Yep. You can get to them once you make a report.
Yeah.
And see more details. So anyway, just a thought that this might be a place that we can also pull some other thoughts from.
I was wondering, in general sense, can you lay it out kind of like the ag value chain from production towards?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, a lot of times
organize their categories that way.
Well, I mean, we spend a lot of time working with farmers explaining what a value chain is, and you've got your production sector, you've got your logisticals, you've got your processing, and you've got your
consumption. Yeah.
So I'm just saying possibly the way to kind of lay it out. So anyways.
One of the things this is just preference, but the big thing missing in that food system is where the vast majority of our food comes from. Where most people, what do we have on retail? The Hy-Vees and the Walmarts do we need to make.
But in terms of
should at least get an honorable mention.
The existence of the grocery stores
that are yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so in I've picked a county. It says I've got so many large grocery stores and so many small grocery stores, something like that.
I mean, that's it.
It's hard to divide out, but it's not appropriate to talk about food hub in absence of the Hy-Vee.
Right.
They complement or compete with each other.
You can pull some stuff out of I think it's the quarterly census of ag and quarterly census of. There's an name for CEWS.
There's also the county business patterns data, right?
Yeah, and then I mean, we have all the SNAP authorized retailers locations.
So if the grocery store is listed as an IAC code stuff, you can pull out. You can actually pull out kind of, I'll say, volume. You wouldn't be able to pull out the actual names, but you can at least get a size.
Good. Where do most people access their food?
Yeah.
I think that should be part of our food system.
Don't we have like WIC authorized
scriptures?
We do.
Yeah, I think just that basic count of grocery stores and maybe some idea of scale of the grocery stores, if that's possible.
Desert ideas.
And you get your dollar stores and quickie marts and all that too.
Where I get my Slim Jims and stuff like that.
There you are.
And I think the other thing, if our emphasis is to, I mean, obviously having access to university personnel, your terminology can be one way, but if we're trying to look at something that's going to be accessible to the general public and people that are involved in agriculture, our terminology should be such either defined or very obvious that what someone's looking at, they understand what that means. And I think that's one of the things that the university oftentimes, as it's perceived in I think by a lot of people in rural areas, is we all speak in university speak, but we don't speak in a way that someone can understand. And I think we need to be really conscious about making sure that our terminology that we use is such that there's either an explanation of it or it's really crystal clear to somebody what it is we're talking about. What's a SNAPS?
Oh, it's a supplemental nutrition assistance program, so
Okay.
it's, yeah,
Food stamps.
yeah, food stamps.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Then, I mean, could you just say food stamps? Well, I can't.
We usually say, we try to say formally food stamps.
Oh, okay.
They changed the name a couple years back.
Okay. I mean,
Yeah.
okay. I mean, but I'm
Yeah,
just trying to,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's right. That's how most people still think of it.
Yep.
So I'm gonna roll on through this and go over to the ag site report. Maybe just bring up some of these things like around food security, and then maybe we want to scrap some of this or say this is covered in youth and families or something like this. But I wanted to display this for your consideration and as part of the ag and environment report. And here we do have grocery stores. That is from the county business patterns. Yeah.
That's really important in rural areas.
What it is, this is though, is a county density of grocery stores rather than like the exact pinpoints.
Is
The way
that whole
data works.
section food access? Food security to me sounds like you're worried about salmonella in your lettuce.
I mean, and that's what I
Food
think.
Safety in university speak,
Right.
but it,
I mean,
many people.
I guess securing food, I mean, if John Q. Public is gonna see food security and gonna wonder if it's gonna make him sick.
I mean,
But it's all food access.
Could you make it food safety and security?
Yeah, the food insecurity definition just is about not having the income to afford food at certain times of the year or something like that. So that's, but yeah, that's a very social science.
And
definition.
in ag land, food security means it's free from adulteration or somebody adding a contaminant or something to it. So it has a different meaning depending on where we're looking at it.
It's important for us to know.
Yeah.
It's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when I think food security and I throw safety in there, I think of the same thing. I think of incidents of food poisoning, contamination in fruits and vegetables, those kinds of things. And again, is it of interest even for, you could go to the county health departments for reported incidents of food poisoning or other things. I mean, I'm just trying to look at, that's what I think about when I'm thinking of those kinds of things. And even though that sounds not so sexy, the fact of the matter is it would be of interest to somebody to look at where are some of those things happening, and is it different in one area than it is in another? And so
in terms of the data elements that you see on the screen right now, would this be another area that we want to scrap and say, look, this is available somewhere else? Or there's something that we want to keep in the ag and environment report from this? Certainly the food access was mentioned with grocery stores.
But we would keep it under that heading of
Right,
food
it'd be in a
security.
different category. Food access. Yes.
I hate to remove food from agriculture.
Right, but it
Right.
could be under just a food category or something.
We've been severely knocked for doing that, and probably rightly so.
Yeah.
Well, that's what we recently did all of our assessment. People told us, y'all don't do any food.
Yeah.
That's the perception.
Okay.
You're just.
But if we had information on grocery stores, farmers markets,
From ag
some of
business, you
those
get some information about like direct sales.
direct sales, would that be the type of thing we'd want to include then instead of some of this? Right,
Well, I think we
make
already
sure-
wanted to keep some
Sorry.
things about location, so maybe keep something about grocery stores and maybe even
Yeah.
the SNAP retailers, but just move them around.
I think we should try to do that and come back and present this again.
Mhm.
On that. Maybe the same with health and health outcome.
Yeah.
Those are two things that are very much in the health and, I guess, health and safety area.
Yeah, I don't necessarily see it.
I don't know that those need to be in this report at all.
salmonella outbreaks. I mean, that would be.
But-
would have been an area.
But again, they could be
Yeah.
about health.
But is health and health outcomes, I mean, again, I'm thinking in terms of animals. And so there is no place, there is no place for animals. There certainly isn't. And so perhaps health and health outcomes may be animal health and health outcomes. And then that's in your agriculture, because even, yeah, I mean, I'm just trying to figure some place to put it where.
It could be like animal and food production health. I mean, I think
Yeah.
the salmonella or the outbreaks in the broccoli and all this, right?
Well, what about when we're talking about environment too? Do we have a place for like toxic sites, or is that just in the? do we
Yeah,
move
and that would be-
Oh, that's
yeah.
true, like toxic release or
So I
licensed,
think you could combine a number of those things in there with respect to, well, environmental health. I mean, what we might want to consider is environmental. You might want to consider animal health. You might want to consider environmental health. The two are somewhat different. I don't want to load it up too much, but I'm just trying to think of something where you're addressing both of where you're addressing both of what your concerns would be with respect to.
Well, this could get back to the pets thing too. Who was it that did the study about a decade ago about the relationship between E. coli in the streams and the people walking their dogs in the neighborhoods? That relationship there.
DNR and vaccine did a lot of that.
I mean, you want to talk about extreme health and like 303D listings and impaired waterways?
I think that would be stuff for like the ag side. Maybe I should pull that up on the screen here, just to remind folks what we have in the ag site.
Yeah, I think. I mean, I don't know what extension does in terms of environmental health programming. We talked about it. Lawn, urban applications. There's like weed management. And does extension do like other more broadly environmental?
Well, this could be like that algae bloom collection stuff. Like
Right.
that as well.
Yeah.
There's a lot of solid waste work that's going on.
Yeah.
You know, where's the
Outfalls
approved
and all that.
landfill for certain kinds of waste and.
Okay.
So within the extension ag environment, we have 4 sub areas. Is that helpful to you as a way to organize? We have plant and animal health. Plant production health, animal production health, agribusiness and policy, natural resources and environment. So
That would be a
helps
great
sort
framework to
things
work within.
I think that,
for
yeah.
you to,
And it's a
if
consistent
you want to
framework.
put dogs and cats and goldfish, you got a category land.
Yeah. Yeah, well, no, I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think to me that I like goldfish anyway, but my daughter had one for 10 years. But, we didn't know when he was dead and when he was alive. But anyway, but I think I like that breakdown to me sounds a little bit simpler to my mind and simpler to what Joe Public, Joe Farmer, maybe. I don't know. What do you think, Lee? I see your.
Sounds like university speak to me.
Okay.
Land, water, climate. I mean, like one word things, food access, just plant health and production. You can put anything under that, right? I mean, you could put climate under that. You could put soils under that. You could put soils underneath the animal. I mean, what kind of pasture? I think that if I'm there and I'm going and I'm a pasture guy and I want to know if I can put pasture on this site.
Yeah.
I'm going to look at the land part. I'm going to look at the water part. I'm going to overlay those kind of things onto what my site is, as opposed to what we are, which is our areas, if that makes sense.
I understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, I
And
think
you
it
can throw
gets
that thing
to-
of water at it if you
There's
want, but
pros
it's just,
and cons to any kind of taxonomy you come up with.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess, I mean, and again, I'm pretty simple-minded in the fact that I just basically, I think of plants, animals, and then the rest, and I don't really care about it. So, except when I'm lecturing to your class, so that's okay. So, yeah, no, I'm just trying to, I think we need to revisit what our categories are a
Right.
little bit and to see how we can embrace what the identity of ag and environment is. And I think honestly, if you look at it, I mean, kind of thinking about it is it kind of look at Kafner, the whole idea of what of Kafner is. I mean, certainly it's got animals, it's got plants, it's got forestry, it's got recreation. I'm just trying to think of that diverse list of things that are in the college of agriculture here. I mean, and it certainly does include a lot of environment. I was just trying
And economic information.
yeah, so I'm just trying to think if you look at your basic, what's the breakdown in within some of that. And I just want to be true. I just think we need to be true to a concept of agriculture. And if that's in our name, agriculture, environment, we need to have the things that's anyone could look at and say, hey, that deals with a farm. That deals, I mean, so I don't know.
How far are we from getting outside of this room? I mean, what about a stakeholder group? What about actually getting hold of a couple farmers or MFA and showing them this and going, what do you think should go in this? How should we remodel this? Because we're in this room and we think we know what they want.
Yeah.
I mean, I
But
think
I'm
even-
telling you, I've been to enough stakeholder groups now, and I have no idea what they want.
Right. And one of the things that we're doing with this, and go back to the concept of all things Missouri, is this thing was launched in 5 or 6 weeks here in the spring, and we kind of threw everything into a bucket.
Okay.
One of the main concepts behind this is what Marshall Stewart's called rapid prototyping. Is we get something out there, stand it up, and bring in feedback and modify as we go along. So it's designed to be a dynamic and flexible website. What we want to do is get something out that first off hits the target for the extension community, and then we can take it out and expand it beyond that and get the local feedback and things like that. But we're looking here first, can we help our folks out that are out there trying to, the new CESs that are trying to describe their communities, the folks that need to be on the front line and dealing with issues that folks are coming to them with. And that's the first level thing I think we're trying to support. I don't know, Joe, if you have any more thoughts on your end, if you're still on, if you have any more thoughts on your end on that. But I think we have a first level support right here at home, and then expanding out beyond that.
That being said, then maybe your idea of putting in plants and animals and natural resources works better. With that being said,
It really depends on the audience. And
Yeah.
there may be different reports that we build for different audiences.
And it implies that environment as it relates to agriculture. Which means there's a bunch about the environment that people think of.
Yeah,
And we actually don't do much with at the University of Missouri. I don't know how far down that trail you want to go.
I know that Rebecca North had some good inputs in the last meeting about water quality issues.
Certainly.
And it would be nice to include some of that information in
Yeah,
there.
and that actually impacts, to be real honest, that impacts not only just people in parks, it becomes a big deal in agriculture and in some animal losses. I can tell you right now, I'm dealing with a case right now where someone lost 25, it's always 25, but 25 animals, and that was probably associated with a blue-green algae cyanobacterial toxins. And so I think that does, I think that does what Rebecca's doing in some of those things, I think fit really well in that juncture of environment, which impacts animals and impacts humans. And Yeah.
Just real quick, I'd like to also look at the types of data that are in the ag site report, because those could easily be brought into this as well. It's one of the reasons to do that. And this is something that has been tested over a number of years with the public in mind. And I think we've had decent feedback on this. Ray has, right?
Yep.
Ryan, over the years. It's a slimmed down, trimmed down style of report. Everything's all in one long page here. And you recall whenever you go in to generate an ag site report, you outline an area on a map, typically a field or a farm, and you get the report back for a very specific area. In this case, it's got a little geographic summary. It tells you it was just under 80 acres that I outlined to generate this report. But it has some of the same types of data that we're talking about with the ag and environment report. We got some information on demographics. Here it's showing distance from your little area you've outlined, but certainly we can do demographics like, hey, here's the number of communities within your county and things like that, that we could borrow from the concepts of this report. But I think more of the interesting categories would be down in some of the things we're talking about from the environmental standpoint. For instance, the hydrologic summary. If you think for a county, we could do all these same things and summarize the total length of streams, the water bodies, the information on watersheds, the streams on the 303D list. I don't see that here, but I thought we used to have that, et cetera, that could be put into a report that folks could access on that. Same with soils. You said you think about the land. Well, here's the soils. We have land use on down below, and you could do some stats on soils. And this shows the hydrologic group and some information on productivity based on soil type. But you could get into other information about the soils and summarize those as well for your county. And I think actually NRCS does some of that summary at the county level in some of their reports already that we could probably latch into. Information on threatened and endangered species, flood hazards, karst topography you were talking about, Ryan, earlier, that you would be able to access through something like that. And then the climate summary, where we're talking about, what is this? This would be something that perhaps we should discuss with Pat Ganan on what is a good source of information for this. But this is like rainfall distribution for the area, normal temperatures, and rainfall, which was targeted towards the nutrient management community, I think, in terms of some of that. And then there's that windrows.
There's the windrows, yeah.
That was included in here.
You can click by the month too.
Yeah.
So if you want to see what it looks like in August, typically that's the way your patterns typically are.
Or
Yeah.
April to May.
And I think a little spraying stuff like that, where you can understand, okay, well, I probably if I spray chemical, potentially this is the way it is going to potentially move.
April, May, and June spray chemicals. There's your windrows.
I'd like to wear a shirt like that. That would be
You go.
Yeah.
But I was also going to say on the
That's from NOAA. That's who has that NOAA NCI.
The rainfall data, I know at least for just because we deal with the insurance product, they've got it in grid locations for long-term precipitation and that's basically like, I think 15 by 12 mile grid.
Oh, I thought they were 4 kilometer. I'd be more detailed than that. It's 15 by 12. Well,
Yeah,
that's still pretty good.
it's the grid
That's still
location.
pretty
So and it's basically aggregated between multiple weather station data, but that's what they use on that PRF insurance to calculate what's the long-term rainfall index and then the deviation from it to pay out to the payouts. But and so to the level of that, you can get it down to a pretty precise level on rainfall at least.
And just as a side note, I pulled up metrics for the ag site from January 1 of this year until yesterday, and there's been 5,709 hits to the homepage of that site. So that doesn't count when people make a report and go back to that specific report each time, but at least they're hitting the homepage. That's a pretty decent number.
And is it all fee for use or is some of it free?
It's
All
all
of it's
free.
free.
It's all free,
It's all
okay.
free. You can
Yeah.
do any courses you want to do.
What's that?
Yeah.
This is the data Tim and I were starving for when we were looking at this thing.
Yeah.
And yes.
Oh, that's been up there a few years.
But I think that's a lot of people don't know about it still.
Right.
Even, I'm talking within campus.
Marketing's an issue.
You know, well, I mean, it's just
That's why you want something like All Things Missouri to point to all these things.
Right. Yeah.
I think I could see with this format, some things could be added to that would fit what
These classifications.
Yeah,
or categories. I mean.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about. I mean, to me, that seems to be hitting.
What I feel like you could do is you could take this model and develop 5 different tools. Each one has a different client focus. And some of them may have 60% of the same stuff, and then the other ones will have a little different twist to them.
Ryan, you're exactly right, and that's what we're talking about. We want to have these specific tools on down in there, but we want one snapshot report for ag and environment that extension folks can use, and perhaps eventually the public can use, to give them that concept of, first off, here's what we're incorporating into ag and environment from a university standpoint or a university viewpoint, and second off, what the condition is for the area for those factors that we're incorporating. Does that differentiation from the levels make sense to you guys?
Yeah, I think another thing to think about is what key metrics in agriculture or ag economics or plant health or animal health will be most impactful for those extension engagement specialists who aren't ag focused. So we talked this morning with or yesterday with a nutrition specialist who's now at CES, and what baseline ag data would be most useful for context setting in that environment, in that use. And there's a lot. We talked a lot about very detailed, different metrics.
So part of my new job is to just go sit down with those people.
Okay.
Hear of them. I'd like to know.
Yeah.
Because we've got some that, well, what's scattered out there now. I mean, that's not to say we don't need to get it advocated for.
Yeah.
Folks on the phone have any comments? Sorry, I don't know. He's still nobody's chatting. Okay.
Well, I wondered if the area that you outline, can that be tied to the web soil survey from the USDA to show the soil mapping?
Yes, it could, or you can map directly from the report here and see the soil surveys. And I think it works a lot faster than going to the web soil survey. Their thing's kind of slow.
It is.
On all that.
That's great.
Pull that up and go into the full report here, which sometimes takes a little while. There it is, full report of all your, 101 different interpretations of your soil, plus some of the background information and things like where that soil occurs in the United States and so on.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah. So do I have to go back to get to the report? I guess I do. And then we try to have an explanation of each one of those categories too, and that's in the ag side, and that's kind of some of the things we want to bring into this more generic thing. You get your soil triangle and so on. So you can have links to things like that too from these reports. So it sounds like on the CARES side here, guys, at least I've got some homework, or we've got some homework, maybe rethinking some of these categories to fit with maybe the 4, or use those as a basis for coming up with categories that we would want to have in the report. And maybe we'd have subcategories in some of those to do with some specific items that we talked about today. And maybe rethinking this entire approach in terms of that. And then pull into it some of the data sets that we've mentioned, but we haven't talked a whole lot about data sets here yet. We've been focused a lot on categories, and we only have a few minutes remaining. Are there some key data sets that we need to make sure folks have access to? And they can be things like, you just saw me bring up the soils and things. It can be things like soils, or maybe some statistical information, or what would be some of the key things we want to impart to folks. I know last time we were talking about ag commodities and the distribution of those across the state, right? Animal agriculture.
I think water and air quality.
Water quality.
Yeah, water quality, air quality. You know, I know this probably doesn't, but I would even, you know, I don't, who's looking at pollen counts or any of those kinds of things, and that may be they may be over in your area. But I'm just trying to think of, I just a second ago just looked up, Googled agriculture metrics and looking at sustainable agriculture, and the things that came up right away are air quality, water quality, soil quality,
soil health, yeah,
those kinds of things. So I think that, and they were talking about even on the water quality. You know, a lot of these areas there are public records of analysis and things like that for metals and stuff and things like that. I mean, I think that's of interest to look at. But that I think what I need to do is I need to give some more thought to the category than what the information someone needs and what kind of category that would fit in. So
can I either stand up on the website or send out how are we doing this, guys, as a Google Doc or something to the group? Send out as an email some thoughts on categories as another straw man that we could start doing this. Maybe I'll send it out again as another sheet like this, but with different categories and suggested data elements on that, kind of starting that over again on that. How would that be?
Yeah, we've talked about for other groups, like maybe starting a shared Google Doc or a Google Sheet or something like that, where we can start throwing in data sets, and in this case, maybe start throwing in data category ideas as well.
Yeah. Just we all use Google Docs. They're not a thing.
I know what they are.
Okay.
I use them. That's
yeah.
We also
I have someone in my class on Monday.
Box.
Set up a box.
Yeah.
I have someone in my class on Monday I can talk to about it.
Or we could do a box, a shared box Excel document. That's true. I forget about that. It's easy to do as well. Keep thinking that's supposed to go away, but they never quite take it away, do they?
I think the other platform they came up with wasn't quite compatible. I've heard from Mary Jo.
Okay.
And so until they figure that out, we're box. So
okay. I like Box. I use it all the time. So yeah. Okay. Well, we'll share something out here early next week regarding that then we can take and keep modifying with those. Okay. I just want to remind folks that there will be another meeting on this after Thanksgiving. Gives you incentive to come back from Thanksgiving break, right? Regarding most of that meeting is going to be dedicated to usability, and Melissa and Jen Tang will be running that. We want to get your ideas on how the system works, how it could work better, how you might use the system, right? And,
as well as new technology.
Oh, and new technologies and,
Yeah.
and other linkages.
Some of the tools that we've sort of talked through and just how people might access them.
So that will be on the 28th, I think. I'll find out when Jamie sends out the calendar reminder again.
Yep. Yours is on the Wednesday instead of the Thursday.
Okay, are we in the morning next time?
Yeah. I think
Okay.
you are.
We'll have bagels instead of cookies. Take some cookies with you here. Folks on the phone, any last comments before we wrap up?
Not for me. Thanks.
Thank you, guys.
It all looks really great.
Well, we've got our work cut out for us. Folks around the room, any last thoughts? Okay. Well, I want to thank you guys again for your participation. I think we got probably more of a workload on this particular impact area than some of our others. So we'll keep going. Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thanks for the honesty. It's really good.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to be negative at all. I just was trying to look at it
No, I think
we did it.
yes. I mean,
Look, it's
we're
fine
not
if you like
experts.
those fish. That's cool.
We did a judge on that.
So are you interested in lecturing again this year in that class?
So should I end the meeting here, Jamie?
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh. Yep. And then I gotta stay here and wait.